Harley can't help being a bootleg. Here's a look at the NECA Toys Batman Arkham City knockoff Harley Quinn. An Arkham Asylum psychiatrist assigned to treat the Joker, Dr. Harleen Frances Quinzel, instead became obsessively fixated on her patient, believing herself to be in love with him. She helped him escape confinement and took her own criminal identity as Harley Quinn. Quinn is a violent and unpredictable felon whose only motivation is achieving the Joker's approval. Because of his cruel and mercurial nature, this in some ways makes her just another one of his victims, albeit a very dangerous one. Since the Joker's Titan overdose in Arkham Asylum, Harley's mind has further deteriorated. She is blindly determined to put a smile back on his face. Before we get a closer look at Joker's puddin', the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the Arkham City Harley Quinn stands. And again, even though I did stress this at the beginning of this review, this in fact is a knockoff of the original one that NECA Toys had released years prior. We're going to go ahead, like I said, and take the tape measure right to the very top of her head, revealing that Harley Quinn from Arkham City stands 6.4 inches in height. We can switch that quickly to centimeters, revealing that the figure stands 16.4 centimeters tall. And again, the whole reason why we do these videos in the first place is because I know I'm not the only one that spots these listings online and thinks to myself, a $15 Arkham City Harley Quinn sounds great on paper. How good is she in person? Well, I did that next best step, and I actually picked up some of these knockoff figures to see how, in fact, good or bad they actually are. Consider this more so a public service announcement than anything else. So, over the course of this review, I'll talk about the positives, I'll talk about the negatives, and there are some negatives that are worth pointing out. And hopefully we are going to have a little bit of fun along the ways. So let's have a look at the accessories that come included with Harleen Quinzel, starting first with her baseball bat. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the original Arkham City Harley Quinn to do the comparisons with, so I can't tell you whether the original bat looked like this, but I will say that the paint isn't the cleanest. In fact, it almost looks like a child took a magic marker and tried to color in the stripes of the bat. I have feelings to believe that this probably was a lot cleaner when NECA first did the jobs, again, so many years ago. But like I said, that bat isn't the cleanest. At least it does have paint, so we'll give it that. You'll get at least points for paint. But like I said, the paint isn't the cleanest. It looks like magic marker. The handle doesn't do any better of a job. It kind of looks like it's just been dragged in a big pile of muddy mud. It does fit into her hands. You can go ahead and take the figure. And actually, either one of her hands are suited for the job right now currently. Just pry the fingers away from the palm and then fit the baseball bat into her grip like that. The bat is a little on the heavier side, so unfortunately the weight of it just doesn't hold against her wrists. I mean, you can bend the elbow, but there really isn't much of a bend. We'll talk more about that in the articulation end of things. In case you're also curious, no, she doesn't come included with that black display stand. That black display stand is required. Let's just say that. She also comes included with a couple of Uzis. Who doesn't like a pair of Uzis? She comes with two of them, and they seem to be identical to one another. The molding is the same, and neither one of them seem to have any paint. I wondered if perhaps they were painted, though. It kind of looks like there's a little bit of caked paint that looks like it's on plastic. I don't think it's just the molding of the plastic. So maybe these were painted and just only done in black. Again, you can fit these into her hands. Mileage may vary depending, again, how you want to display the figure, but you can go ahead and pick this up once again, and you can take the Uzis and just fit them into her hand like that. I kind of like the idea of displaying her with Uzis, although traditional Harley Quinn, I kind of feel like I should be displaying her with the baseball bat. Again, display stand didn't come included with the figure. Didn't come included. Let's have a look at the other things that comes included with the figure. She comes included with a couple of swappable hands. And I can talk already about the problems that I really have with this figure is the type of soft plastic that they used for it. Again, unfortunately, because I don't have that original Harley Quinn available present and right here at the moment, I can't display the two side to side to really show you the differences between the two, but it does seem like the plastic that they used is very super soft. It does cause somewhat of a bigger problem when we're looking at the pegs that are going to fit into her hands. These pegs have already started to have stress marks, not on these ones, but the ones that are currently existing inside her forearms. So those are the accessories that come included with the figure. Let's go ahead, take the Uzi out of her hands, and remove the display stand. Didn't come included with the figure. One of the big problems that come with this particular figure is the durability of the joints. We can talk about certainly the sculpting of the figure, but I'll talk right off the bat. The biggest problem I have is like the things don't seem to stay properly in place. Like, for example, her peg. The pegs on her hands, these are the ones that already were in their hands or in her sockets. And only the few times that I've popped this out and put it back in, you can already see some stress has developed, both on my part and on the part of Harley Quinn. So that's a bit of a shame. I don't know how many more times I'll be able to pop the hands out and replace it with the hands I want to go with. So I think I'm going to decide for myself immediately which hands I want to use, and probably going to go ahead and stick with that. Say, for example, I want to use this hand. Carefully, I'm going to remove this hand and hope that the peg joint doesn't break. But again, you can see that stress mark already developing. I've done this maybe 3 times already, and I almost feel like 3 times is already too many. We're going to pop this back into place. And we're going to give her this hand instead. I kind of like this gestured hand. I just wish that the pegs would hold up a little bit better. My biggest by far issue is these ankles. This ankle isn't so bad, but it's very prone to popping out. Although it seems like I'm almost struggling to do that. These pop out and they don't stay well enough in place. In fact, actually, when I'm putting on display stand, the ankles have buckled on me several times. This ankle, though, this foot pops off all the time. All the time. And even if I just put the figure down without a display stand, sans le stands, get her feet all straightened up as best as I could get it, she's barely holding. In fact, I'm actually surprised. Sure enough, wouldn't you know it, as the record button is now currently working, she's standing. Wasn't the case before. In fact, the several times I've tried to have her standing on her own, just now consider this more luck than anything else, this ankle has buckled and popped right off about, I would say, at least a dozen times or so. Of course, like I said, doing this in front of camera, it now obviously wants to work, but now it's making me look like I'm a fibber face. Nobody wants to be a fibber face. So anyways, I do have real issues with the joints. More so in the ankles, still an issue though in the hands. And again, the type of plastic they use seems to be pretty soft on this figure. That being said, now I feel like a fibber face. That being said, let's get a closer look at her face. And while it isn't a fibber face, it certainly is a pretty messed up looking face. Look at the eyeballs. This eye isn't so bad on this one side, but the other eye, where's it going? Where's it leaving to? It looks like it's packing its bags and ready to leave Harley's face. The sculpting isn't bad, and one of my things I really liked about this Arkham City Harley Quinn in the first place was it did have a pretty good looking head sculpt. There was also a quarter scale, if I'm not mistaken. I did do a review of that one. But this one eye right here, where is it going? It is extremely sloppy. The other side isn't so bad, but that other eye, yeah, it needs some serious work. She does also have all these visible scratches all over her face. That wasn't something I did. That's how she looked when we got her out of the packaging. I guess it's one of those cases where it's what you pay, you get what you pay for. You can certainly pay a little bit more to get a full legit copy of this figure, something that was released by NECA Toys initially. You probably find it over on eBay, and it's probably at least $100 or so. It might even be less, depending on the listing. But this figure is about $16. And for $16, I guess you get an all-right painted Harley Quinn for the most part. Like, even her tattoos are there, and they're somewhat able to register what they are. Like, that looks like a playing card with a woman on the top there. Like, the tattoos are decently detailed, I have to say. So, like, it's not all negatives. It's certainly not a case where all the things I'm going to talk about are negative points. There are positives. There are negatives. The biggest negative, again, being the ball joints in her hands and ankles. I want to show you also the detailing right there on the lower half, her tummy tum right there. And that's also been decently applied there as well. I certainly won't fault this figure for paint applications. Short of, again, the eye. The eye is a little on the sloppy side. Maybe the hair is a little on the grungy side. But I guess the rest of her body isn't terrible, really. The coloring of the crimson red mixed then with the black of the alternating colors looks actually pretty good on this figure. I just wish she was a little bit better constructed. She also has a real working chain. A metal chain, of all things. I was surprised to actually see that. The detailing on her legs, though a little on the dingy side, still again pretty nicely painted. And again, the alternating colors of her lower boots, that black and alternating red, look good as well, just a little on the muddier side. Quickly spinning the figure around so you can see the back of it as well. Having already realized I was going to have some difficulty with her ankles, because that was the first thing when I put the figure down, the ankles just shot off. Didn't fly across the room, but they did fall right off. So I thought I was going to have some serious issues when it came to Harley Quinn's posability. Let's have a look at that right now. Her head does rotate back and forth. It is, after all, on a ball joint. There's like a real clamminess to the plastic. One of the other observations I wanted to make about it. But the head does rotate, like I said, all the way around. It seems like her actual ponytails are ball jointed. But it's not something I really wanted to press the matter on, because I felt like if I was going to twist it, the ultimate end result of it, I was going to twist them right off. While it does look like they could have at one point been ball joints, I don't think I can actually pull that off on this particular version of her. As for her arms, the arms hinge out. Pretty tight joints, I will say, on the arms. You can rotate the arms all the way around as well. Again, really clammy looking skin. She has just a single hinge on the elbow, and it's a very limited hinge. You can see it right there. You can rotate the arms back and forth. You can rotate the hands all the way around. Just be careful of those pegs. She does also have an upper torso ball joint. Lower torso, she has splits on the legs with very visible looking pegs right there. The legs can move forward very little, move back very little, and technically she does have a little bit of the swivel basically where that's attached to the ball joint. She does have a single hinge on the knee. You can also rotate the lower leg, and then when it comes to, of course, Problem Town downtown, you've got, like I said, that ball joint. Even just twisting that peg joint, this one ankle is the worst of the two. Again, I was so surprised I actually got her to really stand in this review. I kid you not. I tried so many times to get her properly to stand, and both the ankles just seem to continue to cave way on me that I just end up saying, just forget about it. Just forget about it. And I used myself a display stand. No, not technically was a NECA display stand, but I did use a display stand nonetheless, and that's unfortunately probably what I'm going to end up doing. I don't think Lady Luck is going to be smiling down on me the whole time and just displaying her without a display stand, because I really don't want this figure to fall over, because I do feel like the pegs on the ankles and the pegs on the hands are things that are going to break right away. By this point, I've reviewed probably about half a dozen of these knockoff figures and statues, with most of them being picked up over on AliExpress. No, it's not a plug for AliExpress, but that's basically where I've found most of them, and I've found a few, I think, also over on eBay, where they frequently find listings for. But what I was expecting to have was generally negative experiences with these figures. In fact, I was just assuming I was going to take them out of the packaging. The plastic would be extremely cheap, the paint would be rough, and probably the figure would just fall apart in my hands. And that's not always been the case. I've tried to be going into this completely unbiased by the fact that I just am a big fan of NECA to start off with, in a case here of Harley Quinn. So I really want to positively go in here with a blank opinion and just list the positives and the negatives that I find on all these figures that I'm having a look at. And like I said, there's some cases where I've had some positive experiences with them. In case here of Harley Quinn, I can tell you that the plastic seems a little on the softer side, especially things like her hands. The joints don't properly stay together, so when you are trying to peg the hands and the feet in, especially those ankles, I've got literally just that black boot, not even resting too much on the turntable. Most of her weight is actually on the display stand, because that ankle has buckled on me too many times to count, even though I probably counted about 12 times. The figure isn't terrible, but I do feel like if I had the opportunity and the same amount of money to be spending on these, I would most definitely want to pick up the original NECA Toys version of the Arkham City Harley Quinn, because I feel like I would get a better figure, and honestly speaking, I would want to spend the money on an actual legitimate copy of this. But I get the idea that if there's collectors out there that have a limited budget and they wanted to get themselves, for example, the Arkham City Harley Quinn, because that just happens to be the figure that we're looking at in this final looks, and maybe you didn't have the money to spend for what these scalpers are selling these for now on eBay, because you probably could find this Harley Quinn for probably closer to $100. $16 seems a little bit more sweeter to your budget. I can understand why people want to pick this one up. Again, the whole reasoning why I wanted to do these reviews even in the first place was I wanted to be able to give you guys a good, strong idea of whether it was even worth in the first place to spend the money to buy these bootlegs. Because after all, you don't want to get these home and have the things just fall apart or they're absolute crap. I will say to the credit of Harley Quinn, she's not absolute crap. She has a very lopsided eye. Her pegs that are in her wrists look like they're going to be broken anytime now. And of course, yeah, there's the ankle issue. But other than that, it's not a terrible looking figure. And if you have a more limited budget, then yeah, I would say, even though I wouldn't want to endorse the idea of getting these bootlegs, I guess the Harley Quinn isn't a terrible looking figure if you have a more limited budget to work with. What do you guys think of this figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. And for your video question for today is, have you ever picked up what you knew well in advance was a bootleg, and were you impressed with the results when you got the figure home, or the statue home, or whatever the case was for the bootleg that you bought? If you guys are also new to this channel and enjoying all the content we've been doing, especially the fact that we're having a look at these knockoff figures, then yes, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, that you're turning on the bell notification, and that yes, you're coming back to this channel regularly because there's always going to be new content popping up. Of course, we are going to be having a look at some legitimate NECA stuff. And periodically, though, we may be also looking at some knockoff figures. Not just NECA, but the other knockoff stuff that you can find online when you have a little bit too much time on your hands at night and just before you're ready to turn into bed. Don't go on AliExpress. I can tell you that firsthand, as I've now bought probably like half a dozen things already. Lots of stuff coming your way, guys. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.